Welcome back, ninja community, and persons that have just become ninja enough to view my materials for the very first time. Congratulations on becoming ninja enough to view my materials. Now in this video right here, I'm going to be covering some defenses against a bow staff, a few bow staff techniques, and before I get into showing the defenses and the techniques, I will go over my quality statement disclaimer mostly out of liability, so bear with me as I run through it. That, of course, is that the viewer understands my quality statement and disclaimer video, additionally agrees that this video right here could be treated as is with ballistic protection, which in short means I don't have a seal on it, therefore I don't guarantee the techniques and or your application of the techniques. And if you're watching this video with the intention of using any of this content and committing a crime, that is also a crime. Using any of my content in committing a crime is its own crime. Also, the viewer agrees that this is my intellectual property that I'm allowing others to view. Okay, so if you're doing some training on your own with a bow staff or defenses against the bow staff, these are a few techniques or defenses that you can train on your own. If you have set up a training dummy, right, like a bow staff, tied at half and tied near the top, and then the other end tied to a tree. This can emulate one movement that a bow staff can make. It is very difficult to use any dummy to emulate all the movements that the human body can make, even with weapons. So I will cover a few techniques that are mostly applicable to one simple movement, and that, of course, is the strike that comes from underneath. As the dummy moves this way, as you see, it's emulating the strike from underneath. Now, you have to bear in mind that the strike from underneath, if you hit it, right, if you return one strike with another, right, say you deflected by hitting against the strike, it's coming back around harder, or it could come back from a different direction. Especially true from underneath. It could come from the top, or if it's coming from underneath and you hit it, it could come back around to the side. So, one thing to bear in mind is that a real shanobi is not going to be fighting someone in their comfort zone. It's best to not fight someone who trains majorly in their art to fight them on the ground. If they train to fight on the ground, that is not very ninja to fight someone like that on the ground. If someone is primarily focused on kicks, if their art primarily focuses on kicks, it is best to not swap kicks with them. That is a bad idea, especially if their kicks are very powerful, like board-breaking powerful. You don't want to do that. You wouldn't want to get into a knife fight with someone whose art is primarily the knife. That is a bad idea. One philosophy that a real shanobi knows is that you do not fight a shark in the water, you drag him on the beach. You do not fight a tiger in the grass, you drag him into the water. Okay, so in this emulation, as this dummy here, doing some ninja arts and crafts, this dummy here is emulating this underneath strike. Now, to get the concept down that you are deflecting, you are not striking against, there's two techniques to use, or two techniques that I'm showing you. This is not a recognized form, this is my intellectual property, etc. Okay. The first one is a deflection, or one application is to use it as a deflection. If your opponent has thrown that, you're deflecting it out of the way, right? If it's coming from underneath, you are deflecting. See the emulation here. Okay. Another technique that is not good against that strike is a block. Now, even in the worst case scenario, you wouldn't want to take a full-on hit from a bow staff. That is bad. But the block would come from here like this. Now, if you block a bow staff like that, right, if you block it underneath the strike, you have to keep in mind that the power that you have hit it with is coming back around from the other side, and it could come from a different angle. Okay, if you haven't seen my other videos on bow staff, you should probably check those out first. Okay, a lot of arts will typically practice strikes with bow staff as opposed to controlling the center. That is why one of the most effective things against the bow staff is closing the distance and punching across the top, as some arts will practice controlling. Very few, most not recognized, will practice controlling the center. And this exercise is just one concept. The concept you're trying to get down here with this dummy, a very simple dummy, simulating one movement that the human body can make. The concept you're getting down is that you are deflecting the strike. You are not striking against the strike, because if you strike against the strike, right, if you're striking against the strike, the other end is coming back around harder. As one of the best things about the bow staff, or a few of the best things about the bow staff, is that it is a very long weapon with reach, right? It can typically be used at a longer range. It's also a weapon that has fluidity, as if you strike it, they can come back around with more power, as you have given them the power to strike you with. Okay. One of the downsides is that to use it effectively, someone must dedicate two hands to it in order to use it more effectively, as a strike with just your one hand on it is not very effective compared to a strike with two hands. Okay, so if you've watched the video so far, you should probably hit like hard like a ninja and subscribe to be alerted for when I do videos on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Okay, I'll continue going. Another technique that I will cover in this one, and it is covered in some of my ninja poetry, is this technique here. Okay, the movement moves like this. The poem is, as a roof I stand, I step through it, it rains blood red. Okay, it looks like this. Okay, or simple version is here. Okay, now using one application of the technique, one application of the poem, I will set up another variation of a dummy. Again, it's difficult to emulate every movement that the human body can do, but I will demonstrate here one variation of a dummy. Okay. In this scenario, instead of it being a strike from underneath, much like you saw this right here, okay, this is a strike to the side. Okay, much like if someone were holding it this way and strike to the side, or it could emulate this strike here. Okay, so in this scenario, and this is much differently than most recognized traditional styles. The setup here is to get the feel of that strike. When someone has struck your bow, it is to deflect it and come across the top and hit. So that again would look this way if someone had struck. As you are being struck on your bow, you are parrying the power. You are switching off from guarding from this side to guarding to this side as you come back around to strike them. Okay, again, that looks like this. Okay. So this technique here as you are guarding one strike from that direction. Training the body to move that way from the reaction is how one would train to fight in limited vision. This movement is also ambiguous with a bow, with a nagimaka, and a nagisashi. Also a few other variations of polearm looking weapons. Okay, so practicing this feel. You're just getting the feel of that hit against your bow. It is exactly the same as the idea of deflecting rather than blocking the strike, as the deflection of a strike against yours. You're knocking it out of the way as opposed to giving them the power to come back around and hit you with it. So I'll continue on with another technique. This one is the same, basically the same technique, but coming from here to here. Okay, so coming from here to here is if my opponent had struck the top. Say if my guard were lower in a variation, and they had struck the top downwards, it comes across this way. Okay, and that looks like this. You strike across the top, striking it downwards is moving down and coming back around. And it could even come from a variation of it being more on this side here, as the strike goes back into the guard. Okay. Now, if you are, these movements here are also ambiguous. The strike here is ambiguous if my opponent had used a kick, like a front kick or a snap kick, instead of a bow. As most of the techniques within what I'm showing you is ambiguous of whether I have a weapon or I don't, or whether my opponent has a weapon or they don't. For it to be a real shanobi technique, that is the application, that is the concept, fighting in limited vision. This timing here, if it were a kick, I'm deflecting my opponent's kick, because you really don't want to take a full-on kick from someone who trains in mostly kicks. That would be a bad idea. You don't take the full force of it. The idea is to move it out of the way. It's much easier if someone were throwing a punch, right? If they were throwing a punch, it's much easier to move it out of the way or guide it out of the way as opposed to striking against it. So, like, comment, subscribe, share. Check me out on my Facebook under my artist name or my 10th ninja name, Melel, that's M-E-L-E-O. And I have an Instagram, but I'm not telling you what my Instagram name is. You'll just have to be ninja and go figure that out on your own. And you can share my video with people who are ninja, but not with people who ought to be ninja, because they might accidentally learn something. So until next time, my friends, stay ninja.